Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. It came to my awareness that there was this organization out of York University about entrepreneurship, centered in their innovation center, and it's primarily for females, female entrepreneurs that run female organization. It's called Ella, and I want to introduce you to several members of their board of advisors and talk a little bit about what they're doing, what the challenges are, and how they're helping entrepreneurs, female entrepreneurs, be successful. First, the entrepreneurship manager of Ella at the Accelerator at York University is Nicole Troster. She's got 11 years of experience developing startups and working with organizations to design policies and programs to support entrepreneurship. Valerie Fox is the Chief Innovation Officer of the Pivotal Point. Val is on a mission to enable thriving entrepreneurial communities locally, nationally, and internationally based on a triple win practice of partnership, collaboration, and iteration. And I want to reintroduce you to someone who I've interviewed before, a very impressive young lady, Dr. Georgette Zenati. She is the president at corporate. She's the executive vice president at Corporate Class Inc. She's on the Forbes Corporate Council member, and she's a founder of an organization called Women Helping Empower Women. She had a distinguished career as an executive and senior leader at the University of Toronto and their Scarborough campus. Ladies, welcome to my show. How are you all?
Really well. Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
So maybe I could start with you, Nicole. Tell us a little bit about what this organization is all about, and what does Ella stand for, if you could start with that.
So Ella is the Entrepreneurial Leadership and Learning Alliance. It's run out of York University, and it's essentially an accelerator and a community for women entrepreneurs. And we help to support women-led product and service companies.
Excellent. So let's get into that in more detail in a little bit. But just to start out, maybe each one of you could do a far better job introducing yourselves than what I did introducing you. Maybe Nicole, you could start. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you came to be the manager of this entrepreneurship program.
I came to be the manager of this entrepreneurship program in what started in a love affair for entrepreneurship. My mom was an entrepreneur for 34 years. She ran her own business very successfully. And so entrepreneurship is something that I learned about at a really, really young age, and really have dedicated the last 11 years of my career towards. So I've worked on my own ventures. I've worked to help other people support theirs. I was a lobbyist on behalf of small and medium-sized businesses as well. So really understand the challenges that companies are faced with, both from outside and also inside the organization. And really happy to be part of Ella, to be supporting women entrepreneurs, and to be part of this great group that you're speaking to tonight.
Okay, I got to ask you before I go on to anyone else. You've got a Bachelor of Commerce from Ryerson. You've got a Master's in Public and International Affairs from York University, and you've got a Master's in Business Entrepreneurship and Technology from Waterloo. What's next?
I do.
That's a lot of education. 2 masters?
It is. And
who needs 2 masters?
Well, they have very different focuses. And really, when you look at the work that I do now, it's come full circle in terms of being able to apply that knowledge and helping entrepreneurs.
Val, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
I've got so much to tell because I'm so long in the tooth, but I have been in digital since the 80s. And I started my own business. It was graphic design. I worked on the very first digitized training types of programs as a designer. And IBM scooped me up. I worked on the very first multidisciplinary enterprise software team. I ended up leading those teams under user-centered design. And I ended up being creative director for very large sites like the Sydney Olympics and that kind of stuff. I have a number of patents, like the universal shopping cart for the web. And then this awesome thing happened in 2007, which is when the then president of Ryerson University invited me to jump on board and help him make that university more entrepreneurial and innovative. And together we co-founded the DMZ, which is fairly famous world round for being a great university incubator. And built it up until 2015, and I left when it was named #3 in the world as far as a university incubator. And I started my own business because I really thought that these were the incubators, accelerators, these types of environments really needed for the new economy. I believe that people partnering with one another, which is why I keep talking about partnership, even in my bio, is how we are all going to help each other create great lives for each other.
And what is Pivotal Point? Is that your current company?
That's my company. I started it 5 years ago. And when I started it, the whole point of it was create and help grow incubators and accelerators to help grow entrepreneurs worldwide and have them each connect with one another. So we're helping to raise all boats, as it were. And that's what I've been doing. I've worked in Canada from the Yukon all the way to Newfoundland, in all kinds of towns and cities, universities and colleges, and then also in the Middle East and in Europe and in the States.
Thank you so much. And Dr. Georgette Zenati, talking about lots of education. You've got a bachelor's degree of English and political science from U of T, a master's of business administration from the University of Liverpool, a master of science from the Henley School of Business, and then you weren't done, and you decided to do a doctorate in business administration from where is this from? From the Rotman School of Management and the Henley Business School. Are you done, or is the PhD next?
Well, you never know, but I think I'm done for now. I'm a lifelong learner, and so I keep learning. So I'm learning, researching, developing, and hoping to continue to grow. And so, I feel really lucky and blessed to be part of this group with Ella. It was through an introduction that I had. I've always sort of admired work. And as you know, Brian, from previous conversations, I'm a huge advocate for women, the empowerment space, creating advocacy for women and creating opportunities. And we know that when women rise, they lift their families along with them. And so it's so important to me that we ensure that women have the opportunities to be able to follow their dreams. We also know that women don't get funded at the same pace as men when it comes to entrepreneurship and startups. So when the opportunity came to join Ella and be able to help in any way that I can, whether it's through the marketing lanes or helping them thinking about how we end up raising money to support things like Ella, which are important to our economy and our communities, I said, sign me up, I'm here. So I'm so happy and blessed to be part of this great organization. You're an executive vice president at Corporate Class Inc. What is Corporate Class Inc? So Corporate Class is a consultancy that does a lot of work in the leadership space. I head up the diversity and inclusion practice. We're actually launching a center on May 21st, so you're the first to hear about it. So we're officially launching a center, and I lead that. I lead the women in leadership programs as well. And so that's my day job, which I love. And, one of the things that we find are really important is when women obviously learn, they expand their opportunities. So it's great. And then you mentioned that I also am the founder of an organization called WOO, which stands for Women Helping Empower Women. And it's kind of my after school project.
Wonderful. Well, Valerie, Georgette, and Nicole, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more with these three impressive young ladies in just a minute to hear more about Ella and this organization and innovation and partnerships on incubators and how we can spur more entrepreneurship and development, particularly in women-led organizations. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Tonight we're talking about entrepreneurship, specifically women entrepreneurship, and an organization that's sponsored by the innovation organization at York University called Ella. And it's specifically for females and for female entrepreneurs, though I guess there's some other lucky guys like me that are involved. Maybe Nicole Troster, who is the manager of this organization, of the entrepreneurship organization. You can tell us a little bit more about exactly, again, repeat if you could, what Ella stands for and what Ella is.
Yes, so Ella is the Entrepreneurial Learning and Leadership Alliance. It's run out of York University, and it's essentially an accelerator and a community for women entrepreneurs. And we have a number of programs, for example, that we have put together to help provide things like mentorship, peer mentorship, hands-on workshops, and other resources to help women scale up their businesses. And it's something that's incredible. We've got an incredible community of women who are helping to develop programs for women entrepreneurs and helping them to build robust networks that they need in order to be successful. So that's Nicole? Ella in a nutshell.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. Nicole, how did Ella come to be? Was it your brainchild?
I wish I could take credit for it. Part of it is York University had the foresight to apply for the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy Ecosystem Fund. They were successful in getting $1.86 million to set up programming for women entrepreneurs over the course of 3 years. And it's something that, we implemented. It launched last year, and it's been growing ever since. And in the 3 years, we really hope that we're able to support well over 230 women in building up their businesses.
Excellent. Valerie Fox, why is Ella important?
Ella's important because they are actually creating new ways of working with women so that they're more successful. And it's very interesting because one of the reasons that I even wanted to be here to talk to you is because of Nicole, and she and I have been working so close together, and Georgette, because what happens is you start to work with women and trade ideas and help each other build each other's businesses. And Ella has specific programs that enable you to do that. One fabulous program that I've been telling all the other incubators and accelerators about is the Fractional Exec program. And that is where entrepreneurs can hire people part-time as executives to work in their company. It's been incredibly successful for the startups that have been through the Ella program. The other types of things is the fact that we actually mentor together. So it's interesting, and I'm looking at Nicole right now because I meet with the entrepreneurs as a coach and a mentor, and then Nicole and I talk about it. And there are times when actually the other coaches and mentors get together to also talk about that company. So here's a founder who, founders is it's a lonely business to be a CEO and a founder. Now all of a sudden they have a team of people working for them so that they can be successful. It's awesome.
How does it differ from other incubators and accelerators?
Well, because as I was saying, it's the Fractional Exec program I hadn't seen before, where people had actually added that. And then how the mentors talk together about the companies is also very, very special. There's other things that incubators do, like peer circles, the whole mentorship program, and that type of stuff. And then of course, there's workshops and all of that. But this was specifically fabulous at Ella. And I couldn't wait, like I said, to tell my other clients about it.
Georgette, and I apologize, I mispronounced your name. I said Georgetta. It's Georgette. Dr. Georgette. What are some of the challenges? What are the biggest challenges that women entrepreneurs face that might be different than what men face?
Well, I think, there's a lot of bias in the system, and I'm sure both Nicole and Valerie can chime in if I'm missing anything, but we do know that the stats show that 16% of women who want to create a startup get funded compared to men. So that's a huge gap in terms of just the ability to get in the door and get funding. The other part of it is, I think, when there is just systemic bias in the system. So when women are actually presenting, the ability to be taken seriously or get, donors on side or potential funders on side is a lot harder than it is for men. And so part of it, I think, affects the confidence and the ability to continue to pursue a great idea. And so I think these are some of the challenges that women face. The great thing with Ella, though, and some of the programs that they offer is they provide some of this, the coaching and the mentorship that's needed to get women to kind of that next level. And Nicole's nodding her head because I think she can talk more about the programs I think that they offer. So Nicole, I'm going to pass the baton to you on this one.
Yeah, Georgette's absolutely right. I think one of the biggest challenges is, again, the lack of mentorship and, again, access to robust networks that women can draw upon when they need to. So Val mentioned she's a mentor in our program, obviously very, very accomplished. We have other very, very accomplished entrepreneurs that, have successfully built at least one business who are working to coach these other entrepreneurs that are kind of going through it, most of them for the first time. And a lot of these mentors can help the women avoid some of the mistakes that they might have made. They can leverage the networks of their mentors. Meet people to kind of help pave the way in some ways for them. And it is an incredibly crucial step. And I would also agree with Georgette on the funding piece. Women just don't get access to the same level of funding, the same types of funding that the men do. So that's something else that the committee is working hard to address as well.
Val, maybe I could ask you to sort of elevate for a second and talk a little bit about why you think accelerators. You talked about partnership. We talked about communities a lot in your bio, are important in helping. You said that you back, I guess, a decade and a bit ago, were involved in DMZ or DMZ. I'm doing a doctorate in social capital. Why is social capital? Why is entrepreneurship working with entrepreneurs, working with other entrepreneurs? Why are partnerships, accelerators, et cetera, so important?
It's because I'm going to use that word, they accelerate success in a business. The interesting thing is working alone, you can just do so much. And what we're finding is that in the digital world, everything is very complex. You think of any business, they have to talk about how they sell things, how they distribute things, how they communicate things, how they market, and they're all interrelationships. What happens if they all partner together where they're really helping each other with the connections, the networks, the mentors, all together? So all of that accelerates the growth. And what we're finding is why accelerators and incubators are so important is you're creating an ecosystem. I know that word is probably overused now, or a network of people that are there to help each other. We actually depend on one another and interdepend because we know that interdependency is needed anyway. Anything you do is multidisciplinary. Anything that you do includes a whole bunch of people if you want to get it out the door. And so how can we create those connections?
I understand, the meaning of ecosystem in a biological context. Explain it to me in an entrepreneurship or economic development context, if you could.
Ecosystems, like I said, the word's been used a lot, but it truly is communities of community to happen. I'm trying to think of some. We had actually done an ecosystem mapping exercise for a company. And what we ended up doing was we brought various partners together to see how we could actually help each other. And this was for a food incubator, help food entrepreneurs actually get out the door a lot faster. So if you think about food entrepreneurs, they have to have kitchens, they have to have co-packers, they have to have distributors, they have to have markets to sell their stuff. We actually brought all those people to the table to meet each other because they're all part of the mechanism that's going to enable that entrepreneur to be successful. So instead of you having to do this piecemeal one at a time, what if you brought that whole group of people together? And then all of a sudden the light bulb goes on in each one of these people's minds to go, oh my goodness, I could actually create an interrelationship with all of these people and all of us could be more successful because of it.
Nicole, what are some of your accomplishments at Ella so far?
Well, we actually won an award for providing women with support through COVID. And we've also helped York University in terms of meeting some of the UN Sustainable Development Goals. Ella was recognized for its work in closing the gender gap in entrepreneurship. So definitely some notable things considering we're just over a year old.
Is there a website that people can go to if they're interested in finding out more about Ella?
Absolutely, yorku.ca/Ella.
And do you have any upcoming events?
We will have on July 28th a showcase showcasing the companies, the 5 best companies from our Ascend cohort. They will be showcasing their companies, the progress that they've made over the course of the 5-month program. And really, really excited, working towards that date for sure.
Excellent. We're going to take a break for some more messages and then come back more with Valerie, Georgette, not Georgetta, and Nicole in just a minute. Please stay with us. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're talking tonight about female entrepreneurship. We've got Valerie Fox, and your company, Valerie, is Pivotal?
The Pivotal Point.
The Pivotal Point. And Dr. Georgette, not to be confused with Georgetta, Georgette Zenati. And your company is?
Corporate Class Inc.
And Nicole Troster, who is the manager of Ella, and I presume other entrepreneurship programs or just Ella?
So I oversee Ella, but Innovation York, which is the umbrella organization, has a number of other programs to support entrepreneurs in other sectors.
And you're the manager of all that?
Just Ella.
Just Ella. Okay, fantastic. Maybe Georgette, you could answer. Women entrepreneurs only account for 16% of business owners in Canada. And, yet I hear about so many females that are starting their own businesses, that have chosen to leave the corporate world, et cetera. Why is it so small? Why wouldn't it be 50-50?
So 16% is the percentage that gets funded.
I get the statistic I have here is women entrepreneurs account for only 16% of business owners in Canada.
Yeah. So Nicole's nodding. Did I get the percentage right? I did. It's 16% that actually get funded. So I think there's a lot more women that have actual businesses, but they have been hugely hit, I can tell you, by COVID. The data is showing us more and more that a lot of the businesses, because they're service oriented, COVID has actually been really significant, has taken a significant toll on women this past year.
There's no question. They end up being, the teacher, the homemaker, the cleaner, the everything, it seems.
Yeah, and a lot of the businesses are not, they're startups in the tech space, but a lot of the enterprises that women are starting up, and certainly I think through Ella and Nicole has the stats a lot more at hand than I do, are a lot in the social space. And so with the restrictions of COVID, I think that certainly has impacted the amount of work that women have been able to do and the ability to build their businesses up at the rate that they wanted to. And then when you ask the question about why there's maybe less of them, well, it is hard for them to get funding. A lot of them, if they are starting their own businesses, may not have the same financial savings or whatever to get started. And depending on the business that they're trying to start up, part of it is getting people on board to support that funding and support their growth and support their trajectory. And, Valerie talked a lot about community, and depending on the network that women have, it's very hard to be able to build a community of support to be able to build your business. And so places like Ella actually provide the kind of community that we're looking for, the kind of support, the people that can open doors, the coaching and the mentorship of how to do it right and how to do it well, I think makes a difference. And, Nicole can tell you there's different programs within Ella. So, we talked about Ella as this umbrella, but within Ella, there's different stages that women can go through, and we help them through that process. And I think that's absolutely critical. And it's why I think it's such a brilliant program. And I'm so proud to be on the board for that reason.
Okay. So Nicole, how come only 16% of businesses are female led?
For a lot of the same reasons that Georgette talked about. Lack of funding, for example, the sheer failure rate of businesses in the first 5 years of operations in general is quite high. And then when you factor in, like Georgette said, the industries in which that they operate, for example, a lot of retail stores, right? A lot of retail stores fail within the first 5 years. There's service-based businesses, which women tend to start up. There's also, for example, clothing companies, product companies, those kinds of things, again, with really, really high failure rates. And like we've talked about throughout the conversation, lack of mentorship, lack of community, lack of know-how and access to entrepreneurship education. And like Georgette mentioned, that's why Ella is so incredibly important for being able to bridge that gap.
One of the interesting things that the federal government announced in their budget, along with childcare, was that by providing childcare and getting more females into the workforce, it wasn't actually a social program that was going to cost money. It was a social program that was going to be an investment that was going to return more money, because increasing labor participation by females would mean they'd become, gross national product producing individuals in society, and the return would be far greater than the investment in childcare. Valerie, does that make any sense?
It makes a lot of sense. If you're looking, I don't know, on the Zoom calls that I've been on with various clients, you're seeing the kids in the background because they're home from school. And so, and I'm a grandmother and my grandkids are in the background.
No,
sometimes.
not a chance. You're not a grandmother.
Oh, thank you so much. But yes, I have wonderful teenage grandchildren. And the thing is that you'll see them running around. So it's very difficult to actually work when your kids are around, as much as we love them. Although it's kind of fun too. But yes, childcare, to answer your question, would just adds so much. But I actually wanted to have a little comment, because I keep hearing that this lack of funding, which can be true, because when women are going for typical funding that men can go for and that kind of stuff, yes, they can get some roadblocks. But I'm also finding that women don't want that kind of funding. They want different kinds of funding. And so we have to actually create new avenues of funding. And a lot of it actually is avenues of funding that are less risky. So what we're also finding in stats that women don't want to take the same types of risks. And the reason is a lot of times because they do have to take care of their kids. So they're less likely to take the extra risk for certain kinds of money that they might go for. And so what's great is that new programs are coming on board or being invented so that money can be shared. Think about SheEO. The SheEO funding is amazing. And that's a company that's helping women entrepreneurs by women pooling their money together to help other women.
Nicole, in the write-up that you sent me, you suggested that if gender inequality is reduced or eliminated, that it would translate into 150 billion in potential economic value added. Really? 150 billion just because of gender inequality?
So gender inequality as it relates to entrepreneurship. So if we were able to bring that percentage from 16 to 50%, that would mean 150 in potential GDP because women are, like you mentioned, Brian, working in the workforce, contributing, to the economy and creating new opportunities, new business models, new ways of doing things that have never been invented before. And that's something that we're certainly working towards closing that gap in gender. But it's something that should be addressed because women should have the opportunity to open their own businesses. And a lot of times we see women opening businesses so that they have more flexibility to respond to family obligations, for example. Sometimes it's a matter of, wanting to be reintegrated into the workforce. Sometimes it's a matter of creating an opportunity because maybe they work in an industry that's very male dominated and there aren't as many opportunities. There are a whole host of reasons why women may need to start their own businesses, and society and the economy could really benefit from those women having the supports in place to do exactly that.
So Nicole has talked about how females may start businesses in certain areas because of childcare responsibilities and family obligations and things like that. Valerie, you've spoken about how some females may not be willing to take the same degree of risk that men want to take because of the same issue. When I spoke a couple of weeks ago with Georgette, I asked her if you can have balance, work-life balance in life. And this has been a big issue. And maybe, Valerie, if you're really truly a grandma, which I don't believe, but if you truly are a grandmother, maybe you could tell me, do you think if you're going to be a successful female entrepreneur, can you have balance? And I'll just give you one other thing. Georgette said that she had an incredibly supportive spouse. And if she didn't have an incredibly supportive spouse, there's no way she could have dedicated the time and effort that she did to both her studies as well as her work. And so I just wonder, can you have it all?
And the answer is yes. It just depends on what it all means. And I was going to say that I actually don't believe in work-life balance. I believe in integration of work and life, and I think all of these things kind of roll into one another. What's awesome, I think, and this is where I kind of am looking to the future of where, and we're also seeing it because of COVID, that everything is kind of working within each other. So that when we work, does it have to be 9 to 5? Can we not work at different hours of the day? Does it have to be straight through? Can we create new businesses that allow us to see our families at different times of the day? Can I play? Can I do sports in the middle of the day? The answer to all of this stuff is yes. What's going on now, especially in the digital world, is that we can work We don't have to go to an office. We can be remote. We can work sometimes in an office. And what that does is give us freedom to be able to work differently. And the whole idea of partnership also gives us access to more freedoms than we could have. I totally believe in the next 5 to 10 years that we're going to see more integration of work and life. And so it's not a question of balance. It's a question of how you interweave these things so that we can each do what we love to do, get paid for it, and make a great living and have a great life.
Georgette, what do you think? You've had a couple of weeks to think about it after I asked you that question, and you were struggling because you had said that, as I said, if you didn't have this incredibly supportive spouse, you might not have been able to do it. If your spouse had, wanted to do a master's in business and had all that demands and the two careers were competing, would you have been able to achieve what you've achieved?
I'm going to say I think so. And I say that because I have certainly encouraged, like, he's got his own business and he does his own thing. And I've encouraged him every step of the way. But I think when you asked me that question, I said it's a partnership. There's times where my career has taken and there's times he's wanted to do things. And when my career started really taking off, he was quite happy to support all of that. So, and I'm grateful for it. And I've got wonderful kids and we've kind of worked out where the boundaries are and with the conversations we've had about, what's next, involve him. I don't make the decision without him. Like, he's got to be on board. And so, but I had that conversation when we were dating, and when I talk to women and talk about, coaching and empowering, and I say to them early on, especially young women, like, when you're thinking about who that partner is going to be, you need to have these conversations up front. Like, don't wait till you're 20 years in, because it's not going to be a happy place. Like, you need to be very clear what your expectations were. And I knew what mine were going to be. And so he knew what he was getting at the end of the day, right? So he knew there was ambition. He knew there was a lot of stuff going on. And so he's fine with it. But I would never stop him from anything he's wanted to do. We talk things out. And if he wants to, then it's good. So I think that works out. But I also think it's an issue of timing. And I think, to Valerie's point about the integration piece, I think certainly COVID has taught us that our lines are blurred. The hours that we're all working, the family integration, and there's a lot of actual publications happening about this hybrid system of what our life will look like, not just in terms of working from home and going in to an office, but also in terms generally what our life is going to look like post-COVID. And so, I think it is interesting in how our life will be. And for women entrepreneurs, I think in particular, I think what's really fascinating is, we talked about the money, we've talked about all the different things and the challenges I think women have, but we do know that also there's a lot of financial acumen that women don't necessarily, we don't teach young women to have financial capacity, financial literacy, so I think, when you're starting up, I think that risk averseness, I saw that in my research just in career-wise, so it's not surprising to me that women would be risk averse in terms of taking leaps and loans and money to, in investing in a project. And so anyways, all this to say that I think partners matter. I think how you make decisions matter. I think financial strategy matters. And so I think, they're all intertwined.
Nicole, 2 weeks ago, I interviewed a fascinating author, a successful lawyer, business executive, who wrote a book called Pound On: The Glass Ceiling. And her argument was that lean in wasn't enough, that if you wanted to be successful, now this was in a corporate world, not necessarily an entrepreneurship world, but if you wanted to be successful and crack the glass ceiling, you had to pound on it. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely agree. And I think all of the women on this call today have done exactly that. Like, if you look at the career trajectories, these are women that have worked in, again, male-dominated industries where there wasn't a lot of space for women, especially at the ranks that both these women have kind of operated at. I myself have worked in male-dominated industries all my life, and yeah, pounding on the ceiling is what I've done. I've been a bit of a black sheep at every step of the way, challenging the way that organizations look at problems, at entrepreneurship, at enabling change. And I think it's only really by rebelling truly and pounding on that ceiling that change will happen. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so happy to be part of Ella. I think, we're seeing so many different types of change that have been long overdue in the world right now. And, working with such an incredible community of women that come together, that support each other, that are lifting all boats up, as Val always talks about, is incredibly important and also incredibly powerful. And I think you probably have to do both in tandem, to be honest, pounding on that ceiling and then working together to make sure everybody kind of comes along as well.
That working together is interesting. And maybe Valerie, you've got a point of view on this. I went to Harvard Business School, and Harvard Business School did a fascinating study that was taking a look at why females weren't getting better marks. And in Harvard, like lots of places, participation in class was critically important. At Harvard, 50% of your mark is participation. And they found that females weren't putting up their hand nearly enough and asking to be called on, which is this lean in, pound on kind of attitude. But fascinatingly enough, it was that professors weren't calling on the females even when they had their hands up. And even female professors weren't calling on the females when they had their hands up. And so therefore, it was almost like there was systematic sexism, even amongst female professors that had a bias against females. Do females have a bias against females?
It's a pretty heavy question, I gotta say. And I haven't got a clue how to answer that. I cannot speak for all women. I do know that it goes on both sexes, and biases happen regardless of gender, and how you think of people and how you work with people. It just depends on the person. I actually want to go back to the pounding on the ceiling. I actually don't work like that. And although I'm aggressive, but in a different way. And it's really about creating relationships. So Nicole, I was glad that you started to talk about the whole relationship thing, about getting ahead. I found in my whole career, and I've had an amazing career, I love my career, that I had champions in my life. And this is where people saw things in me and gave me a chance, gave me an opportunity to do something different. They saw something in me that I was different.
Were those champions male or female or both?
They were both. They were both. And I mean, if I'm looking, I go back in my career, I didn't ever fit anywhere. And, you know, I was listening to you talk, Nicole, and I was going, oh my God, I was always the odd man out. I worked at IBM, for God's sakes. I was some hippie chick designer. And the fact that they took me in, but they saw something in me that was, I didn't even see, to have that championship. And then even the stuff that I did at Ryerson, the stuff that I'm doing now, it's about all of us seeing something in somebody else. So that's why when you asked me that question, Brian, it was like, that's such a negative question. The interesting thing is I'm seeing more positive than negative. I'm seeing more people seeing incredible bright sparks in other people. And that's where the magic happens. That's where really awesome innovation happens. Companies start to grow and scale. And that's where those partnerships come into.
Georgette, what do you think? Do females support other females?
Well, the data would say not as much as we would like, for sure, but I'm a huge believer in what I call the power of one. I literally just wrote an article in Forbes magazine, and I talked very much about the fact that, you know, you can start with one idea, very much like an entrepreneur. You know, you've got an idea, but really it's having someone who can open a door, and it's that ripple effect that I think can make a huge difference. And so, you know, it's funny you asked the question. Well, I've had sponsors myself. I've been very lucky. I've had probably more male than female, but probably the industry that I'm in, that were champions and people that helped me and opened doors. And as you said, Valerie saw things in me, and you know, it was a little bit on the edges sometimes in my entrepreneurial spirit in an academic institution, but people took risks and do that. So I think, you know, when we, you know, part of the data that you're talking about, Brian, is very much, it speaks to the fact that, you know, research has shown, because there's a lack of women in senior leadership roles, there is this bias that tends to happen. But it also happens not just with women, it happens we see it when there's racial inequality at the top, and if there's a person of color or a person of certain ethnicities. And so there's this bias that tends to happen, and it's called Queen Bee, but actually it applies right across the spectrum. And so, but I do agree with that. I think the times are changing. I think people are thinking more and more that, you know, the more we work together, the more we can achieve. And I think it's great. I mean, I'm seeing it in the work that I do daily in our, you know, in my company around the diversity and inclusion piece. Everyone is wanting to do more of that. Everyone needs to understand, how do you create better inclusion? How do you create belonging in an organization? How do you help one another? So the demand for training has been through the roof on that. And I think, I think the times are changing. And I think a younger generation is also much more inclusive than previous generations. So as that, the people work through the organization, I think we're going to see that trend decline more and more.
We're talking about women in entrepreneurship tonight, and an organization at York University in their innovation sector called Ella, which is all about females supporting females, women supporting women in entrepreneurship. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us, please. Well, welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. We're chatting tonight with Valerie Fox, Nicole Troster, and Dr. Georgette Zenati, who are all members of the advisory board for an organization called Ella, which is an organization at York University, their innovation sector, to foster more entrepreneurship for females, for women supporting women. Ladies, I want to ask you one question, if I could, because it's really something that I've been wondering about of late. When I started in the business world, a lot of my classmates that were female felt like they had to sort of act like men. They had to dress like men. They had to look like men. They had to act very masculine. Can you be feminine in today's world, whether it's the corporate world or entrepreneurial world? Anybody?
That's a tough question. The question is such an interesting question. What if you don't want to be feminine? What do you mean by that question?
Do you have to, I remember some investment bankers that I dealt with that, wore ties. They were they became more masculine. They weren't allowed to be feminine.
So can you be yourself? I think that I'm going to take it that yes. And the absolute answer is yes, of course you can. And the interesting thing, if people want to, I don't think people have to play a part that isn't them. In fact, I really believe that most very successful people are successful because they are being themselves. Okay.
Georgette or Nicole, any comment?
Well, I think being authentic is very important. I think, as Valerie said, and, to me, when you say feminine, I think of, again, I think, what does that actually mean at the end of the day? There's so much fluidity these days. But I also would say to you that I think feminine is strong.
You told me once that someone told you that you couldn't have curly hair, that you had to dim down.
Yeah, and I didn't. Look at me. It's still long, it's still curly, and it's blonde. So I'm going to be me. And I think I also reached a certain point in my life where I sort of decided that, this is who I am. And if you like me, great. And if you don't, you're really missing out. I'm just going to tell you. So, so I think you have to be you. You have to be you. So, and I think that's what gets you success. It's being authentic. It's being true to who you are. It's making sure your purpose and your passion align. I think all that is important.
I want to thank all of you for coming on tonight and tell us a little bit about Ella. Georgette, do you have any final comments that you want to tell people about?
Well, I would say that, and I know Nicole may say a little bit about this, but Ella is such an important project. It's such an important thing. And we are going to continue to be able to, we need to be able to raise money for continuing to support women. This is such an important space. And although the government gives money, it doesn't give enough, and not for it to be sustainable. So I'm hoping that through my role on this board, that I can help them raise more money, be able to bring in partners, and be able to bring people who are willing to support the investment of women and the growth of women, because we know when women rise, we rise our communities, we bring them up, and we bring in our families. And so I hope that I can work with Ella and the team to be able to create some really great projects and engage our communities to raise some money so that we can triple what's already in the books right now from the government, because we know that's not sustainable.
Valerie, final comment?
Also about Ella, that I love the program. It's already done, so it's already created so many new models that as I said, I'm spreading the word of these new models. I actually think more models are going to come out of it, again, of how we can create stronger partnerships that will strengthen the ecosystem, strengthen our communities. And I believe that it's important because Nicole and her team are willing to try these things out. Try them, get them out, and work with others to make them successful.
Nicole, you said that the federal government supported you a fair amount, as well as York University, but you need something more. Tell us what your final pitch is.
much like what Georgette and Val talked about, partnerships, people who really believe in the mission of the organization is absolutely fundamental to the continued existence of Ella. 80% of the women that come to us have never been part of an incubator or accelerator before, and that shows us that there's a real need in the marketplace for us to continue these services beyond 2023, which is when our government funding runs out. So if you believe in what we're doing, you want to get involved, please reach out to us. Our website is yorku.ca/Ella. If you're a woman entrepreneur and you're looking for support, go to our website, learn about the programs that we have, and get involved. We'd be more than happy to support you as well.
Fantastic. Ladies, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Brian Crombie Radio Hour. It's a real pleasure hearing all about Ella. And that's our show for tonight, everybody. I'm on every Monday through Friday at 7 o'clock on 960 AM, or you can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. All my videos are on Facebook, on YouTube, on my website, briancrombie.com, and you can get my podcasts almost everywhere at Spotify, at Audible, Apple Podcasts, Spreakeasy, etc. So listen and share some of these wonderful interviews that I have the pleasure of doing. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Bye.